Attention! You won't believe what the river left behind when the extreme flood that swept through that town finally receded. Houses were swallowed, bridges collapsed, and chaos reigned supreme. But amid all this brutal destruction, something inside the old church remained. Something that the water and mud inexplicably refused to touch. What remained inside, at the heart of the disaster, made even the most skeptical question everything they know about the forces of nature and the inexplicable. Brace yourself, because what happened will chill you to the core and change your way of seeing the impossible. Before that colossal flood turned the town upside down, the village lived a simple, routine life on the riverbanks. It was a small place where everyone knew each other, and the local church, with its ancient stone walls, was a meeting place for generations, a haven of peace on sunny days and a beacon of hope when the dark clouds of worry began to gather on the horizon. There were rumors about the river, murmurs that it was angrier than usual, but no one imagined the scale of the approaching nightmare. The peaceful routine of those people hid the fragility of their homes and their lives, waiting for a day that would erase the past. But what was coming was something that would mark time not with trauma, but with an unspeakable mystery. The newspapers and television warned of a historic flood, and the mayor called for evacuation, but those who have lived their whole lives in a place think they know the whims of their river. They were mistaken, and they would pay an unthinkable price for this conviction, watching their certainties dissolve in the mud that would swallow everything. Then it came. A gigantic mass of dark water, violent and untamable, carrying away trees and everything in its path. It was no ordinary flood. It was a tsunami of mud and debris that devoured everything in its path with a merciless fury that can barely be described. The roar of the water was deafening, drowning out the cries for help. Houses floated like matchboxes before shattering against the current and sinking, their structures turning to straw in seconds. Entire families lost everything in minutes, clinging to whatever they could as they were swept away by the flood. The night turned into a nightmare of screams and despair, flashlights racing through the chaos, and the hope of rescue lost in the overwhelming noise, the only sound permeating the darkness. The world seemed to have turned upside down, and the city, once breathing life, now lay submerged, a brutal scar of twisted metal, uprooted trees, and utter desolation where homes and businesses had once stood. At the height of their despair, many looked to the hill where the old church stood, a high point in the landscape. They thought that perhaps, if anything could survive that catastrophe, it would be this church, given its solidity and its centuries-old construction. The ancient stone walls seemed unshakable, the city's strongest bulwark, but the river showed no discrimination. Aerial images released later showed the church surrounded, nearly swallowed by the brown tide, looking like a ship sinking in a sea of mud, a stark contrast to the glorious vision it had displayed before the tragedy. No one could get close to it in the first few days. Access was impossible, the current still too dangerous, and the water level covered the roofs of many neighboring buildings, making it a perilous place for any soul attempting to wade through the mud to reach it. That building that once represented faith and stability was now just another isolated structure amidst an ocean of destruction, a lonely reminder of the life that had existed before, and the overwhelming pain that had followed. The air surrounding the area was heavy, not only with the smell of mud and death, but with the disbelief and grief of those who had seen history swept away along with the memories of their ancestors, crushed by a relentless flood. When the waters finally began to recede, revealing the full extent of the calamity, a group of volunteers and firefighters, with the faint hope of finding something, anything left, decided to make their way to the church. The walk was surreal, more like a scene from an apocalyptic movie where there was no life, only the utter ruin of everything man had ever built. The streets, once paved and clean, were now riverbeds covered in a thick layer of silt, making it difficult to walk and revealing the remains of what had once been houses. When they finally reached the church, the scene outside was already shocking. Exterior walls were partially destroyed, with entire blocks ripped away like paper. The bell that rang out at each mass had been knocked from its tower and lay unrecognizable amidst the mud, and the windows had been turned inside out by some violent, unknown force. It seemed as if the brute force of nature had rendered its verdict on the house of prayer, proving that nothing was invincible in the face of such fury. The main door was jammed with mud, giving only a tiny gap, but one of the side gates, incredibly, was wide open, inviting entry to a spectacle of even greater desolation, preparing those who entered for the chaos Mother Nature had inflicted upon her own. What they saw upon entering the church's main nave was breathtaking and time-stopping. The interior was an unrecognizable skeleton of a sacred place that had once teemed with life. Massive, ancient wooden benches, which had withstood generations, were broken and piled up like firewood. Collapsed statues lay prone in puddles of mud, their arms and heads missing. Stained glass windows, which had once painted the floor with divine colors as the sunlight filtered through, were now shards of glass mixed with the mud that covered the floor knee-deep, making every step difficult. But then, the sight froze everyone, stealing their breath and speech, because it was impossible, it couldn't be there. There, in the midst of all that apocalypse, the main altar remained strangely clean. There wasn't a speck of dirt on the white linen cloth that covered it, gleaming as if freshly laundered, and in the center of it, open and intact, lay a centuries-old Bible, its pages absolutely dry, as if it had never seen a drop of water. This wasn't a symbolic image. It was a radical break with reality, an affront to the logic of everything they had ever witnessed. It made no sense at all. The water had destroyed the walls, the pews, the paintings, the confessional, and every other artifact in the place, but it hadn't dared touch that altar or the word contained within, leaving everything in a state that contrasted absurdly with the atmosphere of destruction surrounding that space of clean, intact, and incredibly white earth. Those who first witnessed the scene simply froze, in a state of shock and disbelief. The silence that followed the initial shock was broken by murmurs of disbelief, followed by tears and low prayers, for faced with such impossibility, despair and the inexplicable overwhelmed everyone present. How was such a thing possible? How had such a miracle arisen amidst the mud and misfortune? Civil engineers and natural disaster experts later failed to provide a plausible explanation. There were no signs of where the water might have stopped, nor any physical obstacle to protect it. The mud was everywhere, in every crevice, in every corner of the rest of the church except here. It was as if an invisible force had created a protective bubble around the altar and its sacred objects, a barrier that prevented the river's fury from contaminating and destroying that small corner of the city. The news spread like wildfire around the world. Skeptics, religious people, curious people, everyone wanted to see for themselves this thing that defied all known natural laws, this inexplicable anomaly. And no matter what they thought or tried to explain, everyone left the church with the same unanswered question etched in their minds. How? Months after the tragedy, with the city slowly beginning to rebuild and the flood scar filled with new buildings, the church's story didn't diminish. On the contrary, it grew, spread to the corners of the world, and became a legend, told in whispers or in tones of awe for generations to come. For many it became a symbol of hope, irrefutable proof that not every catastrophe can destroy faith or what is considered sacred, illuminating a ray of light in the darkness. For others, it remained an enigma, an inexplicable flaw in the matrix of reality, demonstrating that there are phenomena for which humanity does not yet have, and perhaps never will have, logical or rational explanations. The altar became a point of silent pilgrimage and a tourist attraction. People came from far and wide just to observe that small, untouched space amidst the flood scar and draw their own conclusions. Some left believing in the inexplicable, while others became even more skeptical. The flood took away homes, memories, and lives, but it left behind a mystery that endures to this day, whispered from mouth to mouth, and which serves as a chilling reminder that there is more between heaven and earth than our limited understanding can imagine, a silent testament to a greater force that perhaps decided, on that day, to make water respect faith and mark history in a haunting way. This story forces us to confront the unthinkable, doesn't it? What happened in that church during the extreme flood challenges everything we believe possible and makes us question the extent of our knowledge. What do you think? Was it a rare natural phenomenon, an absurd coincidence, a miraculous intervention, or something far beyond our capacity to understand? I'd love to hear your honest opinion on this mystery, on what might have really happened. Have you ever heard of anything similar in your life, in your city or elsewhere? Have you ever encountered an event so inexplicable that it made you question reality, turning your certainties and convictions upside down? Tell us in the comments what you think about this chilling and unspeakable mystery. Your insight is crucial and can help us discuss the possibilities of what actually happened. If you were impacted by this narrative, please like the video to let me know this type of content interests you and that we can bring you more stories like this. Share it with your friends and family so more people can discuss this shocking story. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos with mind-blowing stories and revelations, posted here every day. Thanks for watching, and until the next story that will make your hair stand on end.